I'd like to think that we've talked a lot about sustainability, regen ag, and climate smart ag over the last 3 years. I'd like to look at it as a funnel, as trying to get down a little bit more specific of what we're working to accomplish. Sustainability covers a bunch of different things, from community involvement to regen ag. When you get down to regen ag, you have a focus on soil health, on biodiversity, on climate, on water quality. And then when you get down to climate smart, it's mostly focused on practices that have a greenhouse gas emission positive impact.
A greenhouse gas positive emission impact. In other words, doing something with greenhouse gases to make sure they're not around.
Yeah, for sure. So every crop that we grow, there's greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with it. And as we know, every farming operation is different. Every region is different. The choices that need to be made at the field level, there isn't a standard operating procedure. They can have several different tillage practices, fertilizer plans, etc. Some of those have more positive or more negative impacts, specifically around greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity, water quality. So with our Climate Smart Ag program, the one thing that we try to do is incentivize some of the practices that are a little bit smaller as far as impact on greenhouse gas emissions, knowing that for farmers there's usually a productivity or a cost concern with those practices. So we try to create programs that offset those productivity and cost concerns.
Now, I know most of the non-farming public probably is interested in following us here. When you get down to the incentive part, now some of the farmers are going to perk their ears up. So what sort of incentives and out there are, and how are they measured?
Yeah, that's the most critical thing. So we started this fact-finding mission in 2012 because we didn't want to dictate practices from farmers. We wanted to add incentives and financial returns and technical assistance expertise to accelerate the adoption of practices that were already happening. But when we had asked farmers to define sustainability, their most common answer is financial sustainability, one. And then two, when they invest in a piece of land, they're not looking to own that land just for themselves or their kids. It's for their kids' kids as well. So the one thing that we do, along with our downstream partners like the PepsiCos of the world, is create funding opportunities in the form of, if they choose a certain practice like a cover crop or a no-till or a robust fertilizer efficiency program, we pay them or certain dollars per acre, up to $25 an acre for one practice, can be up to $33 an acre for multiple practices. But also, we will score what we call their carbon intensity of their grain that's coming into us at the same time, of which we'll pay a premium on top of their corn and soybeans and canola outside of those practices. So some of our incentives will pay specifically for practices. Some will be outcomes, because we're all in this journey of learning like these terms together between us and farmers. So we want to make sure that we're speaking the same language as the farmer. They know if we pay for a cover crop practice, what their costs are. They don't necessarily, at a significant amount of those farmers don't necessarily understand that it's going to sequester 0.2 to 0.5 tons per acre. So first, incentivize practice, and then let's educate on what the outcomes are as we go as well.
Now, the term you used was carbon intensity.
Yep.
Farmers are starting to learn that. The elevator industry is starting to learn that too, thinking, wow, we've got to separate one farmer from another because one may have a 35 score and the other may have a 53 score.
Yeah. So it feels like it's maybe, the trend of the future is being a little bit more familiar with what carbon intensity scores are. The one thing I'm pretty proud of our program and our partnership with FBN, is at the end of the year when you enroll in our program, we deliver you an outcomes report that shows your carbon intensity to farmers and like what the different contributors are. So like, what's the nitrogen contributor? What's your tillage passes contributor? What's your crop protection plan, to show you like what levers you can pull to increase or decrease that carbon intensity score? But there's absolutely a learning curve with it, not only on just understanding what influences a carbon intensity score, but also there's complexities, like there's different models that everybody uses as well. I compare it to the old college football days when there'd be a coach's poll and a BCS poll, and the same team might be ranked 3 different ways. That comes with carbon intensity as well, where there's multiple models that you could have the same inputs that have slightly different outputs as well, or metrics that they're delivering that report to you on. And the best way to learn is to have a trusted advisor that's going to be open and transparent, that is probably in this every single day and and can educate you on what the different metrics and the models are and what the contributors to your carbon intensity score.
And those trusted advisors, are we talking about whom?
I would obviously like to say that there's a lot of ADM representatives. There's two things that we've done. We have our specialized team that works specifically on recruiting and educating around these programs. But the other thing that we're doing is we have 220 originators that their primary focus is buying grain from farmers, and has been for the last several decades. We've had our Sustainability Academy to educate them on being nuanced with this conversation so they can have that same relationship with the farmer of buying their grain and talk to them about carbon programs or regen ag programs at the same time. That being said, it's not just ADM. Anybody in this industry is more than likely having a carbon conversation, whether it's a seed company or another grain handler. Go with who you trust that's going to be transparent.
So it seems like a term from one company is probably going to flow pretty close to another company, whether it's seed to an elevator or whatever. So there's really becoming standard lingo that goes across, and at that point, a farmer, if he knows something that a seed is going to produce a certain carbon intensity, then his elevator operator, somebody at that ADM local elevator, would be able to give him that same score.
So, Stu, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say standard. Significantly more standard than it was 3 years ago of us speaking the same language, to where it's going to be a lot closer than it was not that long ago. But there is still a little nuance because the models could be different. You could have a seed company that uses a GREET model, as I'm sure you've heard about, as an example. You could have a grain handler that's using a field-to-market model. They're all directionally aligned, but they're just slightly different in what their results could ultimately be. But they're directionally aligned. It's going to tell you to have a robust fertilizer efficiency plan. It's going to tell you to try to adopt conservation practices like conservation till, no-till, or cover crops, where you can adopt those practices. All models are going to say that.
So do the basics now, and maybe in a few years, why everybody will be on speaking the same language.
Yeah, I like to look at it as like where technology maybe was 10 to 15 years ago, where you couldn't avoid it in the agriculture industry, and it's obviously still evolving today. Carbon scoring, understanding sustainability and regen ag and the environmental impacts, it's just good practice to get started today and try to learn a little bit more, because it does feel like the opportunities are increasing drastically just in the last 12 to 18 months. So if that trend continues, being somewhat familiar, I know it's asking a lot of farmers because they're already, those farmers we talk to, they're the labor, they're the middle management, they're the accounting, they're the R&D. Now they got to be the carbon experts, the sustainability people. Lean on your trusted advisors, whether that's your seed rep, whether that's your grain handler, will help you through this journey, because I promise you almost all of our people are having this type of conversation multiple times per year.